Now I will give the floor to Mr. Mahamat Saleh Annadif.
Mr. President, Excellencies, Member of the Council, it is always an honor for me to introduce the Secretary General's report on the situation in Mali, especially at a time when the country is going through a critical moment in its history. The period from June to mid-September, covered by the report, has been marked by significant socio-political developments. During my virtual meeting with you on 27 July, I noted the main causes of the current crisis as follows. 1. The weakening of central institutions, loss of confidence in political actors, and the rise of religious leaders. 2. The delay in the implementation of the Agreement on Peace and Reconciliation and the worsening socio-economic situation. 3. The deterioration of the security situation, particularly in the center, which has led to human rights violations that MINUSMA often documented, transmitting recommendations to the government, but which unfortunately remain without concrete action. Mr. President, Excellencies, the situation led to a paralysis in Mali's institutions, notably the Constitutional Court and National Assembly. It was in this context of dialogue that the meeting of 18 August led to the resignation of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. This coup de force was condemned by the international community, including the Secretary General and the United Nations Security Council. In addition to condemning this unconstitutional change, ECOWAS decided to suspend Mali from all its institutions and declared sanctions, including the closure of borders, on air embargo, and the suspension of financial transactions until a civil transition is put in place. Since then, days of national consultation were organized from 10 to 12 September and led to the adoption of a transition charter that complements the current constitution. As provided for in the charter, a president of the transition has been appointed in the person of Ban Dao, a retired colonel major and former Minister of Defense. The head of the junta, Colonel Assimi Goïta, was designated Vice President of Transition in charge of defense and security. Both were formed on 25 August before the Supreme Court. A Prime Minister was appointed on 27 September by the President of the Transition in the person of Mokhtar Wan, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, in accordance with the Transition Chapter. Monsieur le Président, Mesdames, Messieurs.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, in his statement when he was sworn in on the 25th of September 2020, the outgoing president listed a certain number of priorities that he hoped to pursue and achieve during the transition, which he hopes will unfurl smoothly. These priorities namely include strengthening the capacities of the Malian defence and security forces in terms of equipment and training. The second priority is the fight against impunity. He stated his commitment to this fight with this now infamous phrase: "I cannot guarantee that there will be zero corruption, but I commit to ensuring that there is zero impunity." The third priority is to organise free and transparent elections, which will be vital to the return to constitutional order in the country. Priority 4 is the implementation of the Malian Peace and Reconciliation Agreement, which stemmed from the Algiers process. On the 5th of October, the government was formed. This government comprises 25 ministers, pursuant to the recommendations which emanated from the Inclusive National Dialogue. This government includes 4 women. This equates to 16% of the government, and that statistic falls far short of the 30% quota called for by law, unfortunately. 21 men feature in the government, including 4 members of the military. Allow me here to state that it is a pleasure for me to state that it is the first time since the signing of the agreement in 2015 that the signatory movement have officially entered a government in Mali. This progress is highly symbolic and potently significant. It is the result of the openness of new authorities and the signatory movements, but of course this progress was fostered by our good officers deployed in order to build trust. Thanks to this rebuilt trust, the Agreement for Peace features in the preambular section of the Charter, and its implementation is enshrined as one of the missions of the government. Consequently, it was with a deep sigh of relief that the people of Mali and the civilians of neighbouring countries, and indeed we ourselves, welcomed the lifting of ECOWAS sanctions following the declaration of the interim president on the 5th of October 2020. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, as you will have noted, the year 2020 in Mali has been marked by tumult on several fronts and a climate of political uncertainty. The country has remained without a government, or indeed was without a government, for 4 months. And challenges have increased in number, namely with the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic and its socio-economic repercussions. This situation also prompted a significant delay in the implementation of the Peace and Reconciliation Agreement, and also worsened the humanitarian crisis which was already latent in the nation. However, MINUSMA, as well as the agencies, funds and programmes of the United Nations, remained committed throughout this period to their endeavours, and indeed continued these endeavours, namely that of supporting the strategy for the stabilization of the centre of Mali. Moreover, as part of its adaptation plan, MINUSMA continued its patrols and continued with the installation of temporary bases to allow for the protection of civilians and to support the Malian security and defence forces. It is in this way that Operation Seka facilitated the return of Malian forces to Labezanga in the Gao region, which borders with the Republic of Niger. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, with the formulation of the new government and the lifting of sanctions, there is every reason to hope for an expeditious implementation of the National Transitional Council, which is now the legislative body and will be the legislative body across the 18-month transitional period. Indeed, the organisation of credible elections which will allow the return of constitutional order depends on political, institutional, electoral and administrative reforms such as those set forth in the Transition Charter. From this perspective, the transition stands as an opportunity for the people of Mali to emerge themselves and pull their country out of this hellish cycle which has seen a succession of coups d'etat one after the other. The United Nations must also seize the opportunity provided by the transition to continue to support this phase which is so crucial in ensuring the crisis in Mali is resolved. The United Nations must pursue this goal with the whole of the international community, namely the African Union and ECOWAS. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, the transition's success is within reach, and the ball remains in the court of the Malian people. There needs to be a collective wake-up call. MINUSMA is committed more than ever to stand shoulder to shoulder with them. I thank you for your kind attention.
Я благодарю уважаемого.
I thank Mr. Annadif for his briefing.